The Galactic Dominion had ruled for millennia, its grip tightening with each conquered world. Empires had risen and fallen beneath its boot, their rebellions crushed, their people assimilated or erased. When humanity was discovered, the Dominion barely took notice. Another fledgling species, another system to tax, another voice to silence. And for a time, humanity played along. We bartered, we negotiated, we followed their laws. We swallowed our pride, paid their tributes, and suffered their arrogance. The Dominion thought it had tamed us. That was their first mistake. The second mistake was assuming we were weak. The Dominion measured strength in planetary mass, in fleet numbers, in firepower that could burn atmospheres to glass. By those metrics, humanity was insignificant. Our colonies were few, our fleets unimpressive, our weapons by their standards primitive. But the Dominion had never fought a species born from adversity, one that had endured ice ages, plagues, and wars that reshaped continents. They had never faced a people who didn't break under pressure, but thrived in it. Still, we held back. Not because we feared them, but because we knew patience. We studied. We adapted. We learned everything about their technology, their fleets, their strategies. And when the Dominion pushed too far, when they seized a human colony and turned its people into another forgotten statistic, that was the day the Deathworlders stopped playing nice. The first sign was silence. No diplomatic outcry, no threats, no pleas for justice. Just a quiet withdrawal from galactic trade, a sudden blackout of human communications. The Dominion's warlords laughed, calling it a tantrum. They had no idea we had been preparing for this moment. When humanity struck, it wasn't with brute force. It wasn't with a grand fleet arriving in formation, announcing war with fanfare. It was surgical. Calculated. The Dominion supply lines vanished overnight. Their ships drifted, unresponsive, their AI systems compromised by something faster, smarter, something human. Their defense grids turned on their own cities, firing upon the very worlds they had once controlled. Entire sectors collapsed, not from invasion, but from chaos. And then the fleet arrived. Not the ragtag, outdated ships the Dominion had mocked, but vessels that defied every expectation. Human ships that moved like shadows, weapons that shattered Dominion hulls with terrifying precision. They weren't just fighting back. They were dismantling an empire, one calculated strike at a time. In the Dominion's throne world, where rulers had once dismissed humanity as a footnote in their history, a single message arrived. It contained no threats, no demands, just a simple statement: you should have left us alone. The Dominion scrambled to retaliate, throwing entire armadas at this phantom enemy. But the war had already been lost. Because they had taught humanity to play by their rules, and we had rewritten the game. Somewhere, deep in the heart of the collapsing empire, a Dominion warlord stared at the reports piling on his desk, the transmissions of entire fleets gone dark. His hands trembled as he whispered the words that no one in his kind had ever dared to speak. What have we done? The Dominion had always seen itself as invincible. Its rulers spoke of destiny, of order, of a hierarchy carved into the bones of the galaxy itself. Humanity was meant to kneel, like all the others. But something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. The reports were impossible. Strategic shipyards gone. Entire sectors unresponsive. Fleets that should have been unstoppable, scattered like debris in the void. And yet, they had barely seen the enemy. The humans weren't waging war, they were unraveling the Dominion thread by thread. For centuries, the Dominion had relied on its sheer scale. Every species it conquered, every world it absorbed. The warlords had believed that if one fleet fell, another could replace it. If one planet rebelled, it could be crushed before the others took notice. But humanity had found the fault lines buried beneath the Empire's surface. They didn't strike where the Dominion was strong. They struck where it was fragile. A Dominion admiral, veteran of 100 campaigns, watched in horror as his own ships ignored his commands. Firewalls that had once been impenetrable collapsed as human-crafted viruses spread like wildfire through Dominion networks. Ships turned against their own. Supply chains shattered. And somewhere, behind it all, was a mind sharper than any blade, a strategist who had spent years studying every weakness the Dominion had refused to acknowledge. Humanity had never been the strongest, the most numerous, or the most advanced. But we had learned to fight wars before we ever reached the stars. We had built civilizations on hostile worlds, thrived in conditions that would break others. The Dominion thought our ships were crude, our weapons outdated. But they had never considered what humanity could do with time. Every battle humanity had lost had been a lesson. Every insult, every dismissal had been fuel for something far greater. Deep within the Dominion's core systems, on a planet that had never seen war in 1,000 years, the ruling council gathered in secret. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices shaking. The Dominion had never feared an enemy before, but fear had begun to seep into their bones. There had to be a way to stop this. A negotiation, a surrender, anything to make it end before their empire collapsed entirely. Then came the transmission, not from humanity, but from one of their own. A voice laced with cold calculation, the voice of a Dominion warlord who had seen what the others refused to. You fools. You thought them weak. You thought them primitive. You thought them controllable. A long pause. You were wrong. And then, the final revelation. A deep space surveillance feed, retrieved from the ruins of a Dominion stronghold. A blurred image of a human fleet, but not just any fleet. A fleet unlike anything recorded before, moving with a precision and purpose beyond expectation. And at its center, a ship of impossible scale, its hull black as the void itself. The Dominion had underestimated humanity. And now, for the first time in their long history, they were truly, utterly alone. In the cold silence of space, Admiral Elias Voss watched the Dominion burn. Reports streamed across the command deck of his flagship, the Peregrine. Entire sectors collapsing. Supply chains severed. Dominion warfleets, once an unbreakable force, reduced to fragments in the void. But Voss knew better than to celebrate. This war wasn't over. Humanity had struck first, and they had struck hard, but the real fight was only beginning. Behind him, a holographic display flickered, showing the latest intelligence from deep within the Dominion's core worlds. Something had changed. The chaos should have sent the Empire into complete disarray, but instead Dominion forces were converging. Not to protect their throne world, not to hold their territory, but to gather around a single unmarked system at the heart of the Empire. Voss narrowed his eyes. They're planning something. Across the bridge, an officer hesitated before stepping forward. Sir, we intercepted a Dominion transmission. High priority, encrypted beyond anything we've seen. A pause. It's from one of their warlords. Directed at us. Voss turned sharply. The Dominion never negotiated. Put it through. A jagged, distorted voice filled the bridge. The speaker's tone was calm, but beneath it was something new, something the Dominion had never shown before. Fear. You believe you are winning, the voice said. You believe you are invincible. But you have no idea what you have awakened. The transmission ended. No threats. No demands. Just a warning. Voss exhaled, his mind racing. This wasn't the sound of a warlord fighting to reclaim his empire. This was someone who knew something, something even the Dominion feared. On the edge of human-controlled space, another piece of the puzzle was unfolding. In a hidden research station buried beneath the ice of Europa, a different kind of battle was taking place. Dr. Anaya Rahman paced the lab, her fingers trembling as she decrypted the final piece of an ancient Dominion archive. The information humanity had stolen from the Dominion's deepest vaults had always been fragmented layers of encrypted files, records of something lost to time. But now, it was clear. The Dominion didn't build their empire, she whispered. They inherited it. The room fell silent. The researchers, some of the brightest minds humanity had, stared at the projection in front of them. It showed a system unmapped, hidden for thousands of years. A graveyard of long-dead warships, their technology beyond anything known. A battlefield where something had fought the Dominion's ancestors and nearly wiped them out. And the worst part? The The reading suggested something there was still active. Rothman swallowed hard. "We thought we were fighting an empire past its prime," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But what if they were never the real threat?" Back aboard the Peregrine, a new message arrived. Not from the Dominion. Not from humanity. From the system the Dominion warfleets had gathered around. It contained only 3 words. Voss didn't move. The message hung in the air like a cold weight pressing down on the bridge. "We are awake." 3 words. No context. No demands. But the meaning was clear. Something had been sleeping beneath the Dominion's empire, something even they had feared. And now it was stirring. "Get me every available scan on that system," Voss ordered, his voice steady despite the knot tightening in his chest. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." The officers scrambled, their fingers flying over consoles. The display flickered, showing the system in question an empty void. No habitable planets, no known installations. But as the long-range sensors calibrated, the readings changed. Heat signatures. Energy spikes. And then, for the first time, something visible. A massive structure, dead and drifting until now. At first it looked like a shipyard, but it was ancient, far older than the Dominion. And inside it, something moved. Dozens of signals. Hundreds. Then thousands. No defined shape, no known classification, just an overwhelming mass of metallic constructs beginning to power up. The Dominion hadn't been rallying for war. They had been trying to contain something, and humanity had just kicked open the door. Voss exhaled, turning to his crew. "We need to pull every fleet back to defensive positions. Now." But before the orders could even be relayed, the Dominion moved first. Their fleet, battered and broken from humanity's relentless strikes, did the unthinkable. They fled. Every warship, every battle group, abandoning their own space. Entire planets, once considered the heart of the Empire, left defenseless as Dominion ships jumped away not toward their throne world, not toward reinforcements, but outward, to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Humanity hadn't defeated them. They had simply decided they had bigger things to worry about. Across the icy depths of Europa, Dr. Rothman stared at the readings pouring in from deep space probes. She could barely process the numbers. The ancient battlefield they had discovered, the one that had nearly wiped out the Dominion's predecessors, wasn't just a graveyard. It was a prison. A fleet locked in a silent slumber for millennia. And now it was awake. Aboard the Peregrine, a transmission came through, but this time not from the Dominion. Not from the unknown system. From a human deep space patrol, one of the scouting fleets stationed near the edges of the conflict. The message was filled with static, but one thing came through clear enough. "There's something here." There a pause. A burst of interference. Then one last frantic whisper before the signal cut out. "They're not machines." Silence gripped the bridge. Voss clenched his fists. This wasn't just a war anymore. This was something else. Something older. Something waiting. And humanity had just become its next target. Voss stood frozen, the words from the lost patrol echoing in his mind. "They're not machines." He had expected the unknown fleet to be some forgotten Dominion warforge, an ancient AI gone rogue, maybe even a failed experiment the Empire had buried and feared. But this changed everything. Before he could react, the bridge alarms blared. "Incoming transmission," an officer called out. "Unknown origin, unknown encryption." Voss clenched his jaw. "Put it through." A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted but undeniably human. "To the forces of Earth, you are in violation." The bridge crew exchanged stunned glances. Voss took a step forward. "Identify yourself." A pause. Then the voice returned, clearer this time. "This is the Sovereign Accord. You were warned to stay away from the grave." Voss felt his pulse quicken. That name, Sovereign Accord, meant nothing to him. But there was something in the tone, in the way they spoke, as if they had authority over him, over all of humanity. Rothman's voice came through a private channel, urgent and breathless. Sir, I found a match. The Sovereign Accord, they were human. But they aren't from Earth. A deep, uneasy silence filled the bridge. Explain, Voss said, keeping his voice level. Long-range scans picked up something moving toward the grave. Not just one fleet. Hundreds of ships, using old human signatures but with technology we don't recognize. The records show no human colonies beyond the frontier, no lost fleets, no breakaway civilizations. And yet, here they are. Voss exhaled slowly. Are you telling me there's been another faction of humanity out here? Before us? A long pause. Then Rothman whispered, I think they left us behind. The transmission flared back to life. You do not understand what you have done, the Sovereign Accord's voice continued. The war you think you're fighting is nothing. The Dominion were never conquerors. They were the last ones to flee. Voss gritted his teeth. From what? A new sound filled the bridge, distant, low, like a pulse vibrating through the fabric of space itself. It wasn't coming from the transmission. It was coming from the grave. The long-dormant fleet, the one humanity had unwittingly awakened, was no longer just activating. It was spreading. Ships that had been dead for millennia were changing, shifting, as if something inside them had begun to reassemble itself. And then, for the first time, they sent a message of their own. Not words. Not threats. Coordinates. A set of numbers marking a single destination. Earth. Voss's blood ran cold. The Graves fleet wasn't just waking up. It was coming home. The bridge of the Peregrine was eerily quiet. Every officer, every technician, every soul aboard had their eyes locked on the massive display. The Graves fleet was moving. Not in a slow, cautious drift, but in coordinated, intelligent formation, an armada of forgotten war machines, reshaping themselves as if something inside had reawakened with purpose. And now they had their destination. Voss exhaled, steadying himself. How long until they reach Earth? Rothman's voice was tight. If they maintain this velocity, 3 days. Maybe less. There was no time, no margin for error. Earth's defenses were formidable, but against this? It wasn't just the sheer numbers, it was the unknown. Every Dominion report, every scrap of intelligence suggested that these things weren't just weapons. They were something else. Something designed for war on a level no species had ever faced. And the Sovereign Accord had known. They had let it happen. Voss turned, eyes burning with resolve. Get me a line to their fleet. Static crackled for only a moment before the voice returned. You've doomed yourselves, the Accord speaker said, a note of finality in their tone. You should have let them sleep. Then help us stop them, Voss shot back. If you really are what you claim if you're human, then you don't get to sit this out. A long silence stretched between them. Then, for the first time, the voice sounded. Hesitant. We survived by not interfering. Voss leaned forward. And what happens when they reach Earth? You think they'll stop there? The seconds ticked by. Then, a different voice, sharper, edged with something Voss recognized all too well: anger. There may be another way. The channel cut. Voss didn't waste a second. Prepare for combat maneuvers. We intercept that fleet before it jumps. The Peregrine surged forward, the rest of humanity's battle groups following. The Graves fleet, despite its ancient origins, adjusted instantly, adapting, shifting its formations before the first human salvo even left the barrels. The void erupted with light, missiles streaking through the dark, energy beams cutting through the abyss. The battle wasn't just brutal, it was impossibly precise. The Graves ships didn't just withstand damage. They learned. Every impact, every fallen vessel, every failed strike within minutes, the enemy fleet had begun countering tactics before human commanders had even thought of them. The Dominion had never stood a chance against this. That was when the Sovereign Accord arrived. Their ships, sleek and angular, cut through space with unnatural speed. And unlike humanity's fleets, they weren't trying to destroy the Grave's war machines. They were trying to disrupt them. Jamming fields, pulse waves technology that Earth had never seen, used with ruthless efficiency. For a moment, it looked like it might work. The enemy formations staggered, their coordinated maneuvers faltering. And then the Grave did something no one expected. It spoke. A single message transmitted across every known frequency. We remember you. And for the first time, the Sovereign Accord hesitated. The message rippled through every channel, echoing through the void. We remember you. The battle froze. Across both human and Sovereign Accord fleets, the realization settled in like ice spreading through veins. The Grave's fleet wasn't just an ancient weapon. It wasn't some forgotten machine of war. It had been waiting for them. Voss tightened his grip on the railing, his heart hammering. What the hell does that mean? Rothman's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, I think they know us. Not just humans in general. Us. Before Voss could respond, the Grave's fleet shifted again, but this time, it wasn't attacking. The ships moved with eerie precision, breaking formation and realigning, opening a pathway straight to the heart of the Armada. At the center of it all, one massive vessel loomed, a dreadnought so ancient that it defied classification. And from it, a new signal emerged. It wasn't an attack. It was an invitation. The Sovereign Accord hesitated, their sleek ships hanging at the edge of the battlefield. For all their secrecy, all their power, they had no answers. They had spent centuries avoiding this moment. But humanity? Humanity had spent its entire existence running toward the unknown. Voss inhaled deeply. We go in. The Peregrine and a handful of escort ships pushed forward. The closer they got, the clearer the transmissions became. Images, fragments of data, echoes of voices long lost. And then, at the very heart of the dreadnought, it wasn't alien. It wasn't some lost Dominion relic. It was a human archive. Records of a civilization that had ventured too far, too fast. A branch of humanity that had left Earth eons ago, reaching into the unknown, only to stumble upon something that changed them forever. The Grave wasn't a weapon. It was a warning. The fleet hadn't been designed to destroy it, had been built to contain. Whatever they had found beyond the stars, whatever had caused the Dominion to flee, was still out there. And it was waking up. The Sovereign Accord finally spoke, their voices tinged with something almost like regret. You were never supposed to see this. Voss stared at the vast archive before him, the weight of it settling on his shoulders. Humanity had won the battle. But the war? The real war had never even begun. As the Grave's fleet powered down, as the last echoes of forgotten voices faded into the void, one final message scrawled across their screens, written in ancient human dialect. Prepare. Voss exhaled, his mind racing. They had stopped the immediate threat. Earth was safe for now. But the momentary victory felt insignificant against the knowledge of what was still out there. Humanity had spent its history proving it could survive, proving it could outfight, outthink, and outlast anything that stood in its way. Now, it faced a challenge beyond war, beyond technology. The universe had just gotten much, much bigger. And for the first time in history, humanity wasn't the one discovering the unknown. It was waiting for them.